This might come as a surprise, but Pamela Anderson is having quite the career renaissance. 2024's The Last Showgirl is the buzz of Tinseltown in 2025, with Canada's favourite 90s pin-up apparently quite likely to get at least some sort of Robert Redford-style nod for her performance. If you told someone in the 1990s this, like, I don't know, Crispin Mills from Cooler Shaker, Saracen from Gladiators, or perhaps Charlie Dimmock, that Pamela Anderson would be handling Golden Globes, they would quite probably say something about her putting a bra on and then dismiss you in a haze of sunny delight, mist back to the wretched future from which you've been birthed. And yet, here we are in the future, potentially with an acting accolade wreath about to be rested upon the blonde thatch on her head. For a long time, Pam seemed like a flash in the pan with a career that rested firmly upon her pneumatic looks. While all eyes were drawn to her in the likes of Baywatch and Barbed Wire, and the fact that she had a certain charisma about her, we weren't exactly hanging on her every word. V.I.P was a show built on Pamela's very obvious sex appeal and was supplemented by surrounding the top-heavy actress with similarly visually pleasing castmates. If it worked for Baywatch, it can work for this. And what is the this in question? It is a comedy drama from the pen of Pretty Woman and Under Siege writer L.F. Lawton that centres around a Hollywood bodyguard agency named after its figurehead, Valerie Irons Protection. The titular Valerie Irons is of course played by the also notably titular Pam. The thing is, Valerie is both very lucky and very incompetent, so the humour and drama comes from her, often beating the episode's antagonist by fluke. The rest of her crew are a rather more skillful bunch in their chosen proficiency, but ultimately they often rely on the ditzy blonde to dig them out of a hole. The celebrities being protected are often portrayed by real Hollywood glitterati such as Jay Leno, Jerry Springer and Stone Cold Steve Austin. It's a bawdy camp action serial that did well enough to make it to 4 seasons from 1998 until 2001. Ubisoft were the team behind this, and the mostly very different versions that came out on PS2, PlayStation, Game Boy Color and PC throughout 2001 and 2002. A version of the PS2 game was due to come out on the Xbox at one point, but was ultimately cancelled. But then the series was belly up and dead by this point. These games are a mixed bag, with the bag mostly being populated with used nappies. The Game Boy Advance game probably is the pick of the litter of runts. The development team is one I've encountered before, the Canadian-based Planet Interactive. They were behind the so-so Road to El Dorado movie adaptation on Game Boy Color, but they'd also worked on the V.I.P adaptation for that system as well. V.I.P is certainly vibrant. I quite like the look of it, to be honest. The colour palette is absolutely as eye-catching as a slow-motion running sequence in Baywatch. Graphically, it's not too bad at all. The animation and sprite work are quirky, but well realised, and the backgrounds are varied and visually charming. I much prefer this clumsy, tiny-footed and huge lady-lumped cartoonish Pam than any attempt they could have made using photorealistic rendering of characters and sets, which was abundant during this time. She and her co-stars might not be recognisable until the Metal Gear style communications part of the game, but it gives the game an early 90s arcade sheen that I really do applaud. Music isn't so hot though, it's very of the era, but also can end up sounding confused like a doddery granny on the verge of being supplanted from her bedsit to a home where professional people will look after her and make sure that all her needs are catered for. Gameplay, as you can see, is akin to the genre that I'm very much in favour of. A platform-based shooter in the style of Rolling Thunder, Shinobi or Elevator Action returns. You can vault up and down platforms and into and out of the foreground, shooting henchwallies like there's no tomorrow, and for them there won't be. Die, you bastards, die! However, as good as the inspiration games are, V.I.P fails to live up to those lofty standards. While control is fairly crisp, there's not actually a lot you can do. you can't forward roll, you can't switch to melee. That's all based on context. Whilst this fits with a lot of the earlier iterations in the genre, you'd expect a lot more of a game released in the early 2000s. You could duck into doors, but not to duck out of the way of gunfire. It will merely end that portion of the level. You'll swap between characters, but not at will. These are set characters for each part of the stage, so you won't be able to select a favourite character and stick with them. They don't massively differ in their abilities either, despite each character having massively different abilities in the show itself. Johnny, the East Asian martial arts master, throws shuriken, but they behave in exactly the same manner as Valerie's pistol. Quick's shotgun has a triple spread action, and Nikki has dual pistols. But other than that, all of the characters behave largely identically in their attributes. There will be a different animation for their shooting and close quarters combat, but no character has any advantage or playstyle over the other really. There are numerous collectibles to be picked up, from the hat of the rich Texan in The Simpsons, from calendars for some reason, to Brett the Hitman Hart sunglasses, though mostly these are just a points boost. However, there are power-ups that remove the time in between shots, making you a lean, mean gunning machine, and also rare smart bombs that can be used at any point, but probably should be saved for bosses. While most of these smart bombs involve all manner of ordnance being fired hither, and indeed dither, Pam throws a feather boa at her adversary. Ooh, scary, a deadly feather boa. Unlike the likes of Rolling Thunder and Shinobi, the enemies are actually pretty smart and will hover until you vault up to their level, meaning you're almost certainly going to take some damage. It is quite frustrating. You can fire up at an angle, but 99% of the time this is pointless, as the bullet will harmlessly scuff off of the bottom of the platform you're underneath. You'll also spend most of your time on your knees as well, but not because you're recreating Pamela's famous grumble flick with Motley Crue drummer Tommy Lee. You see, the enemies fire on sight, and if you don't inch your way forward on your leg joints, you'll have more holes in you than barbed wire script. All of this lends to the growing feeling when you're playing V.I.P. that perhaps the game was a little rushed towards the end of its development cycle. I think there's some really good ideas here, but it feels unfinished. The clues are abound. There are just 8 levels, which ultimately won't take a massive amount of time to plough through, and worse, they are often repeated, like the luxury ocean liner. This time though, with tougher opponents in later levels. There's even a villain's lair level, which has you take 3 of the game characters, one after the other, across the same background. And then one goes all the way back to take on the level's boss. There is outrageous levels of cheeky padding on display in this level. Bosses also look like they should have some sort of pattern, but they don't. Most of the time it's just going to be a case of mashing fire and hoping that you win the particular war of attrition you are on. I cannot recommend enough that you save your smart bombs for the encounters with the bosses. The programme, of course, ended in 2001. This came out in 2002 and had a version for the Xbox cancelled, so yes, I think that Ubisoft might have lost a little bit of faith in the licence that it acquired at this late stage. I couldn't find much in the way of reviews for V.I.P for the Gameboy Advance, so you're going to have to take my word as gospel on this. There are far better examples of this type of game on the Game Boy Advance. Astro Boy, Contra, Ninja Cop, Metal Slug, Elevator Action, old and new, Mega Man Zero. There's no real need to play this, which is a shame, as I had such high hopes for it during the first 5 minutes of play. It was very promising initially, but it will leave you feeling unfulfilled and bored. The same feeling you will get after pleasuring yourself to a VHS of a known attractive television celebrity and a well-endowed skinny rock star husband going at it. I mean, probably. Like, subscribe, and Kay, thanks, bye.